Hello, everybody. This is Alan Stout from the Sunday Night Music on the Menu radio show, coming to you from home, doing, I guess, would be what I would call my podcast from home, number 4. I called them my podcast from home because I'm basically just sitting at home. So I got really creative with the name of the podcast for home. Just wanted to talk to you about a couple things with music. As you know, if you tune into the show, we've been off since the casino closed. And so stuff that I normally would talk about music on the show, I do on the podcast. And I've been sharing some music on the Music on the Menu page that has come our way from some new releases and some live streams. And I've also been doing a podcast series during COVID-19 where I interview people from throughout northeastern Pennsylvania. We did 4 more of those this week, and I'll recap those for you at the end of this little podcast. Stuff that happened this week with music, couple of very disappointing things, obviously, was the announcement on Wednesday of the cancellation, not postponement, of the Briggs Farm Blues Festival. Obviously, there's a difference between a postponement and a cancellation. A postponement means that it'll be rescheduled for another day, and a cancellation means it's not happening. And Briggs, for the first time since 1998, is officially off. Knew that was coming. There was no way that it really didn't look like there was any way that event was going to happen the way things were going with the loosening of restrictions in Pennsylvania and just the way people feel right now about being around large crowds. Sort of been a part of that festival since the beginning. I did an article about it in 1998, the very first one. So I've known Richard Briggs ever since then. And Richard and I even were working on a movie together at one time on the Agnes Flood documentary. So, he's a friend. He's been to my home, and I've been to his. And he worked so hard on that event, he and his family, and it's really turned into one of the best blues festivals on the East Coast. And so I know that it was not easy for him to cancel it, and that's why he waited as long as he could to make the decision. But, we had Richard on the podcast the other day, and that's a real earthy event. That's outside, that's camping. Richard even brought it up on the podcast, the porta potties, job johnnies, whatever they're called, the outdoor restroom things. I mean, it's like people are going to have a higher sense of sensitivity about all that stuff right now with this virus going around. And that event was attended by thousands of people. And so there was no way that was going to fly. Richard will be back next year. He told us on the podcast that he was moving some stuff around. He was going to move the large stage and the back port stage to different locations on site to make more room for people. So it's growing, and he'll have our full support. Richard has always been with us on the show to talk about it every year. Every year we have Richard in every July to talk to us about what bands he has coming in, and we play the bands that are going to be up at the festival. Richard usually asks me to MC some of the artists. I usually do the back port stage where they have the local bands from Northeast PA, which is where I love to be. And so I get up there and help introduce some of the artists from Northeast PA, and it's just always a lot of fun. And last year I took my daughter with me. I've gone down with my dad many times. It's a part of the summer here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and one of the things that we lost to COVID-19. But if you want to hear Richard talk about it and his decision behind it, you can, and a little bit more, you can listen to the podcast that we did with Richard a couple days ago. The very next day, we announced the postponement of Banding Together for Brett. Or should I say the cancellation. We had postponed it in March, when everything was being postponed. At that point, everybody thought we still might be able to do stuff this summer. Well, now we know, not really. And so, that was a tough one. We held out as long as we could on canceling that event because we really wanted to do it. We were very excited about the music. We were very excited about helping Brett Alexander. And it looked like it was going to be possibly one of the biggest nights for local music of the year, or maybe in a couple of years here in northeastern Pennsylvania. A couple things I just want to say about it. I really was, I don't want to say, I wasn't surprised at all, impressed when we start working on that show in January. It was AJ Jump from Carl Hall that suggested we try to do it on a weekend. And I had been involved with many benefits over the years that were usually done on weeknights, because that's usually easier to get bands to give up a night for free, because they're not playing on Friday and Saturdays often. And so, but I said, okay, I agree with AJ, we should give it a shot. And we put a date out there for April 11th, which was a Saturday. And I tell you, that lineup was done in like an hour. Everybody was in. And some of them that had gigs already for that night were willing to cancel them or move them. So that tells you all you really need to know. Well, not all you need to know, but some of what you need to know about Brett Alexander and how respected he is in this community by musicians. And so it was disappointing. But Brett, and we put this out on the little press release Facebook post the other day. Brett didn't want to do the show, particularly because of everything that's happened. His friends, these musicians who immediately lined up to help him back in January, now they haven't worked in the bars, in the clubs, at festivals, at whatever venues they play, whether it be the corner bar or if they were going to be, at Briggs Farm. They've lost all those gigs. And so Brett, he's such a great guy. He didn't want to put himself above anybody else. He realizes that the people that were willing to try to help him out a couple months ago, now probably are getting into a little bit of a fix themselves. And so, he said, look, my family and I wouldn't feel right about doing this benefit. And between that and between the COVID-19 situation where we had no idea when or if we were going to be able to do it anyway, we postponed it, or canceled it, I should say. See, I still can't get that cancel out of my mouth too easily, can I? The show is canceled. So there will be no banding together for Brett this year. But the great news, of course, is that he's doing well, and he's been doing some live streams, and he's back to getting the guitar on his lap and singing some songs, and hopefully, like everybody, we'll see him out and about playing at some point, sooner than later. Maybe it won't even be in 2020, but maybe 2021. So I want to thank everybody for the support on that event. That thing came together easily, and it was going to be a great night. And I really give that's all Brett, man. That's how much that man is loved and respected in this area. I was kind of kidding around, but when we announced the show back in January, I wrote a blog for the Music on the Menu about Brett. And, I probably wouldn't have, I know I never would have done it if we weren't doing the benefit. It was just some of my memories of him, my friendship with him, how I feel about him as a musician and as a person. And, I never would have probably wrote that blog if it wasn't as part of announcing the concert. And so, I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that personally. And I'm glad that a lot of people were able to show him how they felt about him by lining up to be a part of the event. And that doesn't go away. Maybe COVID-19 took the show away from us, but all those bands saying they were going to be there on a Saturday night and telling us that they were going to be there within like 10 minutes after we asked them 4 months ago, that's the real deal, man. That is respect, and that is appreciation, and that doesn't go away. So that'll be there forever. What else we want to talk about with music here? What are you guys listening to? You hanging home? You watching documentaries? I know we're still kind of shut in. Things are loosening up a little bit. I talked about this on the podcast with Chris Ludzik last week. I watched 3 of them now. I watched Bob Dylan, the Rolling Thunder documentary from his 1975-76 tour of the United States. He went out and played theaters. It was sort of this, Rolling Thunder was perfect name for it. It was just this fun tour. For some reason, some of the stuff in the documentary was not true. They made it look like it was a documentary of the tour, but there was some stuff that was fiction. And so I think it was Martin Scorsese did it. I forget the director. Anyway, Sharon Stone like dating Bob Dylan on the tour, and Bob Dylan getting the idea maybe to wear makeup because she took him to a Kiss show at a club in Queens. All that stuff. It's not real. I don't know why they put that in there, but it was kind of entertaining. But the concert shots were amazing, and the audio was pristine, and it was shot on, you could tell it was shot on high grade film, so it didn't have that grainy look to it. So if you're a Dylan fan, just for the music alone and the whole enigma and mystique of Dylan, and he was interviewed currently looking back on the tour, so there's now and then type stuff. Great documentary. I also watched the one on Linda Ronstadt that came out, I guess, maybe last fall. That was terrific. Just a great vocalist. I knew that she had worked with the Eagles early on. Henley and Fry were in her band, and I knew some of that. I knew the hits. I didn't know that she had, done Broadway and done so well there. I did not know that she had done some Spanish speaking language albums. She sang the whole records in Spanish. That's part of her ethnic heritage, which I didn't know either. And so if you like documentaries about talented people, even if you don't know a lot about them, or even if you're not their biggest fan, certainly she's a Grammy-winning artist, and had tremendous success as a vocalist, not a songwriter, but a vocalist, really. I highly recommend the Linda Ronstadt story. It's called The Sound of My Voice. And I watched Bruce Springsteen live on Broadway, which was incredible. I have the album. I bought the album when it came out a year ago. But I didn't sit down and watch it on TV because I had listened to the record. But watching it is even better. There were moments where I was filled with tears. I mean, the stories he was telling. And there were moments when I was laughing like crazy because he's just so funny and so self-deprecating. And it's really one of the best things I've ever seen an artist do. Just him and his guitar. His wife, Patty, comes out for a couple tunes and does a great job singing with him, of course, as always. But 90% of it's just Bruce telling stories and playing songs, and it's wonderful. I guess he did that for 6 months or something on Broadway. I mean, it was multiple nights a week for multiple months, and he's just a treasure. That man is just a treasure. What else? Albums. Someone nominated me to do that top 10 thing on music with Facebook, your top 10 records, and you have to kind of say your most influential albums, and you're not supposed to say anything about them. You just put the album cover up. I think that's cool. For a music journalist, it's kind of hard not to say anything about them because, we like to talk about music a lot. So I'll give you a brief rundown of my records and why I picked them. So I had the Police on there, Zenyatta Mondatta. Police were the first band I think that I ever just liked as that early teenager, when you start getting to that 8th, 9th grade age where you really gravitate to new music coming out. I had been a fan of Elvis in the 70s when I was a kid, and Kiss, like every single kid in America was in the late 70s, and still huge fans of those artists. But the Police, I saw them. It wasn't from my friend's big brother. It wasn't because of a parent who were listening to them or a grandparent listening to them. I saw them on Casey Kasem's American Top 40 television show. They were doing, I think, Every Little Thing You Did Is Magic, and I just thought, I love this band. I love everything about them, and still a big fan to this day. But that record, Zenyatta Mondatta, which had, Don't Stand So Close to Me, and Do Da Da Da, and Voices in My Head. Just a terrific, terrific album. All right, what I have next on my list? I had Pete Townsend, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes. 1982. That record is how I became a Who fan. I kind of backed my way into the Who. I went to see the Who in 82. It was my first concert ever. 100,000 people at JFK Stadium in Philadelphia with The Clash opening and Santana on the bill. 15 years old. Parents drove me and my buddy down, dropped me off at the stadium. I think they took my sister to the Philadelphia Zoo or something because it was like a daytime concert. It was like from 11 in the morning till 8 at night or something. It was it was still daylight when the show ended, I remember. It was in September. And that just changed my life, that concert. But how I got there was seeing Pete Townsend that summer on MTV. He had a couple of songs, Slit Skirts and Face Dances Part 2. I loved the songs. I went out and got the record, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes, and I started researching him. I learned he was, the principal songwriter in The Who. I wound up going to see The Who, buying all the Who albums, and still being, to this day, a huge fan of Pete and all of his music. And so that was an impactful album for me because it led to me going to my very first concert. Bruce Springsteen, Darkness on the Edge of Town. Obviously, Born to Run is the one that most people go to, and I could easily have done that as well. I like Darkness because it's darker. I like some of the, Racing in the Streets and Candy's Room and Prove It All Night. And, it might be less anthemic, but it's just as moody as Born to Run. And to me, maybe just for the song Racing in the Streets alone, that's the one that I go to for Bruce. Robert Plant, Now and Then. I probably like Robert's Fate of Nations album even more. However, Now and Then was the record where I realized that I like Robert Plant just as much as I like Led Zeppelin. And that's saying a lot. But Robert's solo, to me, is, if I say just as good as Zeppelin, I know you guys will kill me, but just as enjoyable to me. I really love Robert's solo material. It started, and I know he had a couple of records before Now and Then, but that was the one where from A to Z, the whole record, I must have just listened to the whole thing for months back in, I guess it was 88. And so for me, being a Robert Plant fan, having gone to see him perform as a solo artist several times in concert, that was a big record for me. Elvis Presley, Volume 3, Golden Records. This was the songs that Elvis made about 1960 when he came back from the Army. He did a lot of great stuff, obviously pre-Army, all the stuff. Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, Don't Be Cruel, all Shook Up. All of those hits that made him the king. Then he gets drafted, and he's gone for 2 years or so. And he comes back, and he starts making great music right away again. Some of it he may have even done while he was on break, while he was in the service. So you've got his latest Flame, Little Sister, Are You Lonesome Tonight? This was a record, I gotta know, this was a record my grandfather used to play all the time when he was watching me when I was a little kid. And that record, I just love that record. And, it was before the movies, too. Right after that, he started making the movies. The quality of the songs weren't as good. Everybody knows Elvis spent a lot of time in the 60s making mediocre movies and recording mediocre songs. He knew it, too. He thankfully got back to making good music around 68, 69 with the television show and, doing the stuff he did in Memphis, with Suspicious Minds, Kentucky Rain. But that little period there, post-Army, pre-movie, is Elvis Volume 3. If you're an Elvis Presley fan, you got to get that record. It's fantastic. U2, All That You Can't Leave Behind. 2000, this record came out. I remember standing at the Gallery of Sound at Christmas, 3 months after this record, a couple months after this record came out. I think the record came out in September. And I had like 5 copies of it in my hand because I was buying it as a Christmas gift for all of my friends. I think, Talk you too. You're going to talk Octung Baby. You're going to talk Joshua Tree. You're going to talk Unforgettable Fire. I put this one right there. And just because of, I love the song Beautiful Day, Walk On, which I recorded with a bunch of my friends, about 10 years ago for one of the Concert for a Cause records. Well, for the last Concert for a Cause record, that's why we recorded it. It's kind of appropriate. New York, amazing song. I think Vertigo is great too. That's a band that has like 5 amazing 5-star albums. And you could name any one of them as your favorites. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with All That You Can't Leave Behind. Just my favorite U2 record. Got a big poster of it hanging up in my house framed. Kiss, everybody figured they'd be on my list. You thought I'd go with Destroy or Alive, right? Because they're the classic Kiss records. No, I'm going with Asylum from 1985. I loved 80s era Kiss. That's the year, there was the years I went to start to go see them in concert for the first time. Eric Carr, Bruce Kulick, no makeup. I don't care about that stuff. I don't care about bombs and pyro and stage show. It's all part of what makes Kiss their mystique. But to me, their songs are about energy. They're about individuality. They're about self-empowerment. That's when I think Kiss was at their best. And I thought Paul Stanley was doing some of his best, obviously, really some of his best singing, some of his best writing. And I thought the band was absolutely on fire in those years from, 82, Creatures of the Night, the last makeup record, all the way up through Revenge. And I love that era of the band. I love the makeup era of the band, obviously. I love Peter Criss. Love Ace Frehley. I love Kiss. I've seen them in concert like, 36, 37 times. But Asylum to me is sort of that epitome of 80s Kiss music. Just, good hard rock. Tears Are Falling's on that record. Who Wants to Be Lonely? It's really the Paul Stanley songs that I've always gone for the most, and he's got some great tunes on that record. The Rolling Stones, Tattoo You, 1981. I was into the Stones a little bit before that with Emotional Rescue. Like I said, I'm at that age, 8th, 9th grade, starting to buy albums. Obviously, everybody heard of the Stones by then. They're only about 40 years old at that time, the guys in the band, but they're already iconic. And they dropped this record, and I think Start Me Up might be my least favorite song on the record. I love Worried About You, Slave, Little TNA, Waiting on a Friend, Tops. The whole record just has this real early 80s New York City kind of vibe to it, which you also would have heard on Emotional Rescue and certainly obviously on Some Girls with Miss You. But Tattoo You, the deep tracks on that record are some of my favorite songs the Rolling Stones have ever done. The Badleys, Up There Down Here, released in 1999, recorded in 1997, was actually in Bearsville for a couple days when the band was recording this record. It was the national follow-up to River Songs. It was supposed to have been. And then came this Polygram Seagram sale. And, the record wound up getting held up and it didn't come out till 99. I had a copy of it a year before that. So I got to enjoy this record for a year before everybody else got to hear it. Thanks to Brett Alexander gave me a copy of it. But I'll tell you, this record has some of the most incredible songwriting I've ever heard. My all-time favorite song is on this record, Running Up That Hill. My all-time favorite song. Not my all-time favorite local band song. My all-time favorite song is on this record, Running Up That Hill. Thinking in Ways, a song about a prepaid funeral. Incredible tune. Don't Let Me Hide, Luther's Windows, Silly Little Man, Middle of the Busiest Road. I love River Songs like everybody does, but I have to give Up There Down Here the nod as my favorite Badleys record, and that's why obviously it had to be on this list. The Beatles, 1967 to 70. That's obviously you're out of Revolver, you're out of the Rubber Soul, you're getting into the White Album, obviously Sgt. Pepper's, Magical Mystery Tour, Let It Be, Abbey Road, that era of the Beatles, the hippie Beatles. They were experimenting more with psychedelics, and they were growing as musicians. They were growing apart as people, and I think they just made some of the most amazing music. The music that band made in 8 years, from 62 to 70, is unbelievable. How much they changed from "I Want to Hold Your Hand," Mop Top, to "A Day in the Life," which at that point was only 5 years, is just insane. You catch a lot of that growth and experimentation on the record, the second greatest hits record. There's the blue record and the red record. I like the blue record, and so if I have to have the Beatles on the list, which of course I did, I'm going to go with the blue record, 67 to 70. So that's my top 10 records that I put up on Facebook with a little bit of an explanation. Another Facebook thing going around: when was your last concert pre-COVID-19? February 4th, Allentown, Kiss. February 14th, FM Kirby Center, Northeast Philharmonic, singing the songs of Aretha Franklin. That was probably the last time I was in a venue of 2,000 people. The last time I was in a venue with 10,000 people was the Kiss show. And then the last big outdoor show I was at was Ringo Starr last year at Bethel Woods for the Woodstock anniversary. So people sharing these stories of where they were at and the last concert. It might be the last one for a while. Those are the last three. I don't think I'm missing any. Podcast, great conversation with Chris Ludzik the other day. We just got talking forever about rock and roll music and books and documentaries and songwriting. It was the longest podcast I've done. It came in at close to an hour. But if you want to hear what Chris is up to in music and what he's been doing and how he's been working through COVID-19 and just hear two guys really just, shooting the breeze for a long time about music, that was a lot of fun. Tom Flannery, incredibly talented guy. Had a great time talking to Tom about how he's been working through all this and writing and his blogs and, the plays that he's written. Incredibly talented dude. So you check that one out. We also talked to Richard Briggs. As I mentioned before, that was done on the day that the festival was canceled, so you could, kind of hear in the tone of Richard's voice. He was pretty upbeat because I'm sure he had, quite a bit of time to make the decision. So when he made the decision, he was at peace with it. But his enthusiasm for next year was exciting too. So and the live streams that they're doing. So you want to check that one out. I talked to Richard for about 20 minutes, just kind of covered everything happening at Briggs. And Eddie Apnell, from the Mere Mortals fame and Tony's Wine Cellar and all the gigs he's been playing all over northeastern Pennsylvania, dropped a little bombshell on us that for next year, for the 30th anniversary of the Mortals, he has something that he would really like to do, which absolutely made my day. So check out the podcast. There were the last three. I talked about the other ones on the last home, podcast from home, but Tom Flannery, Chris Ludzik, Richard Briggs, Eddie Apnell. Probably going to do a couple more next week, and I'll keep doing them until we get back on the air and until we all start feeling a little bit more, normal again. I hope you're all staying safe, bending the curve and, doing what we got to do. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there coming up this Sunday. Special day. Make sure you get your mom some flowers, take her out to dinner, do something, I can't do it, guys. I'll be going to the cemetery to see my mother on Mother's Day. And so it was 5 years ago that I had my last Mother's Day with her, and it'll never be the same. And so, if you have that opportunity, you don't need me to tell you this, most of you, I'm sure, but take advantage of it. Tell her you love her, and make sure you show her, the appreciation that she deserves and that all the moms out there deserve. Thanks for tuning in. I think I rambled a little bit longer today than normal. Usually I talk for about 15, 20 minutes. I think I'm close to 30, so I'm going to shut up now, and we'll catch you on the other side. Thanks for hanging out.